Welcome into part two of our conversation with the fantastic Barry Darsow. I don't even know how to get back into it. So you know what? We're just going to go ahead and we're going to do it because Mick and Joe, there was a lot of really cool stuff. Joe, I'm surprised that he's going to come back after the way that you basically just gave him the middle finger and you called him a fraud. You called him a fake.
No. Like
you did. You're like, why are you such a poser?
Like I said, the choice of one word was not inappropriate. I should have stated it differently, as I apologize. Not a knockoff. There was the resemblance, but let's give Demolition their due. They set their place in professional wrestling history.
I'm going to call you Scandinavian Ron from now on. How do you like that? Not Polish Joe.
Not only that, Chupik, but here's the deal. The train left the station, and unfortunately for you, Barry Darsow was the engineer. And I would advise you to get off the tracks. And let's go back to Barry and pretend that horribly insulting conversation never happened.
I think we need to have a cage match, and Mick, you can start it, and I'll stay in the corner and wait for you to tag.
You know what, Joe? Here comes the axe, and here comes the smasher, the Demolition, walking disaster.
It's good to be back again. I love you guys.
Hey, Barry,
I want to
back after my unintentional dig or knock at Demolition. Not my intention.
Hey, you know what's great about the wrestling business is there's heels and there's baby faces. And you're definitely a heel.
There's no doubt about it. Yep. Got a little heat ski, as they say. Barry, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, one of my favorite memories, back in about, early 90s, you were doing the Blacktop Bully, which incidentally, of all the stuff that you did, that was my favorite. So I thought, this is a lock. I mean, this is perfect for Barry. But I brought you into a cable TV studio, and I don't know what show we were promoting. One of the local independent promoters had brought you in, and the first thing you did was you said that you were driving all night from Chicago or wherever it was, and you came down 94 and you came to the studio and you were looking for a place to park your truck. And you said, you guys could have at least expanded the size of the parking lot. And I said to you, well, where did you wind up parking? And you said, there were a couple of cars parked there. I just drove the truck right in on top of them. That's where I'm parked. So that was the first thing, which was just tremendous. And then you said something about, I don't like coming to Minnesota. The only reason I come here is to go fishing. There goes the cat. To go fishing, he said, and I've made all these phone calls since I've been here, and you just got all red-faced and you're screaming, nobody wants to go fishing with me. Why doesn't anybody want to go fishing? It's 30 years later, and that's still one of my favorite moments. I just loved it, man.
Wasn't that fun back then?
Oh, my God. Yeah. Nothing scripted. This is what we're going to talk about for the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You went out and winged it.
I love it.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I wanted to ask you, Barry, because, at the end of the last episode, you were talking about, your relationship with Vince and everything that he did, for you and for the business. I know from a fan's perspective, we look at the WWE Hall of Fame and you can look at it one of two ways. People look at, well, it's manufactured. It's not a real wrestling Hall of Fame because it's what they believe it to be. But then there are some fans that are like, it's validity. And you look at all of these names that are in there, but I feel like the success that you and Bill Eadie had, you would be deserving of a spot in that WWE Hall of Fame. Have you been approached?
No.
Why hasn't it introduced it should be it should be you guys.
Yeah, I don't really know what there's probably 15 people in a room that decide who's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And I really don't know why we're not. It would be great to be in there, but it's nothing that we can do. I know there's been some heat somewhere, and I don't know where or what it is, but a lot of times in wrestling, you might have beat somebody up in the ring or something, or did something wrong, and they're the ones that are in charge, and they'll say, hey, they'll never be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know, but I just got to look at it where if they think we're good enough, we'll get in one day.
Well, you know what? From my perspective, Barry, it would be a feather in your cap, but it's not a vital. It would be a cherry on the sundae. I mean, you guys, you and Bill built such a tremendous legacy over the years. It would just be icing on the cake. But I mean, you're certainly a Hall of Fame guy and a Hall of Fame team in our eyes, no question about it.
Well, I appreciate that, and like I said before, I'm Barry Darsow, and the wrestler is secondary, and it would be a huge thing to be in it, but if not, I'm the happiest guy in the world. In fact, I tell my son all the time, I said, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I've done everything, and I got a million friends. I'm alive. So many of our friends have died, and I got a great family, my wife, my son, everybody. I look back at, Kurt Hennig and Rick Rude and the Road Warriors, and Brian Adams, my old partner, all these guys. It's just like, it's so sad. And, I talked to Rick, the day, in fact, I was down there like 2 days before he died. And I talked to Kurt the day before he died. And, it's unbelievable that, I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
Barry, you look back on that time, and that's a great segue, because Tom Zink, Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, so many of those guys from that era, for whatever reason, their own, personal choices or whatever, aren't here to talk about it all these years later, which makes no sense. Kurt would just be 64 years old right now, and he's been gone for 20 years. He could, certainly still have a place in the business. When you look back on that, and the stuff that maybe they got into, or the things that they were doing back in the day that you didn't do, was there a reason? Did you have enough foresight to say, hey, you know what? I can't get into this stuff. I want to be around for a while.
I don't know exactly what everybody was doing. What was great, I had, when I got together with Bill Eadie, and Mr. Fuji
for a minute there, guys.
Yeah, you there?
Because I see him there.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I
can hear you. I can hear you guys.
Yeah, I think we're good.
We got him.
One thing that, like I said, I was pretty grounded being with Bill Eadie, and we kind of stayed by ourselves. We went to the gym by ourselves. We did everything away from a lot of people. But I think what got a lot of the guys were, you're wrestling, 28 days a month or 30 days, whatever it is, and you're hurt, and you take a pain pill, and pretty soon that pain pill leads to 2 pain pills, and then months go by, and now all of a sudden you're taking 3 pain pills. Pretty soon 5 years are going by. You can't sleep anymore, so now you're taking a sleeping pill along with the pain pills. Now you're taking 5 pain pills and 3 sleeping pills. And then, you're drinking some beer, you're doing whatever you're doing, and then there's no sleep. And you don't even know that what you're doing to your body. And your body isn't telling you to stop until it's too late. And I think that's what happened to pretty much every one of the guys. It's pain pills, it's sleeping pills, it's no sleep, it's stress, it's all of that. And it's nothing against what they've done. It just was kind of part of the life. And I, to this day, I don't sleep. I went to bed last night about midnight. I looked up at I got a clock on the ceiling. It said 3:58. I was up, and I was thinking of how am I going to finish this garage, do this 2-hour interview with you guys, and see my grandkids at 3:00 and do all this stuff. And I've had so many concussions and so many different things. There's some things I can remember better than anything, other things I can't remember. But I never took that stuff. I never took sleeping pills, never took the painkillers, none of that stuff. And I think that's what saved me.
Wow, man. That's well, I mean, it's we're delighted that you're still with us, and sad that the others aren't. That's the side of the business, Barry, and I know you know this very well. The average wrestling fan looks at the glitz and the glamour, and if you live in Chicago or Milwaukee or whatever, and the WWF comes into town, you figure, oh, well, you know what? This is special. We're the town. We get them. But, the people don't stop to realize for the last 27, 28 days, the guys have been on the road. They don't see that side of the business. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a toll.
Right. And it was easier too being a tag team, because if I got hurt, Bill or Ivan or Nikolai or whoever my partner was, Jim Neidhart, they could cover for you for a day or two,
Right.
Those, Rick or Kurt or those guys are in single matches. They got to work through it every night. And if you don't perform, you lose your job.
Wow, man. Well, it's a dose of reality. So,
and the other thing that the fans don't understand, I've had people comment about wrestlers. Oh, a 10-minute match and they're making $1 million. No, it's not just 10 minutes that they're working. There's the travel time. There's getting to the arena. It's working out. It's all a part of the job. Going into the ring and beating the living shit out of your body is a drop in the bucket.
That's the easy part, is going in the ring.
Yeah, traveling for work is not easy.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to shift gears because I want to talk to you about a lot of the guys that you worked with over the years in some capacity or another. And I don't know if you'll be able to see the screen, Barry, or not, but Chris is going to put up some pictures of the guys. And as he puts them up, I will ask you your memories of them, some from the different territories, the glory days of wrestling. And by the way, before I forget, you said that the Blacktop Bully, last week you said the Blacktop Bully was your favorite character.
Yeah.
I just think, and as I said, you slid into that character. It was absolutely like, this guy is a Blacktop Bully. I don't want to meet this guy out in the parking lot. And I think in a lot of ways that may be the difference in pro wrestling today, where the wrestlers are more or less TV stars. Right. And a lot of people know they're playing a role. Back in the day, guys like you and Animal and Hawk and Rude, there was some believability. This guy's a badass, and I'm not going to screw around with him.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know how I got that name, Blacktop Bully? Quick story, where Ric Flair's the booker, and he calls me up. He says, Barry, he says, I want you to be a truck driver, and you got to come up with the name and all that stuff. And I said, a truck driver? I don't want to be a truck driver. He says, Barry, we need a truck driver. I said, okay. So I called up Arn Anderson. I called up Bobby Eaton. I said, guys, we got to meet in Bob's garage tonight. We got to get a case of beer and let's talk. So we get in the garage.
That couldn't have happened at a better time in terms of the suspense is killing me. What happened after the couple of beers?
So anyways, did you hear what I was saying?
No, you froze up there.
The last thing we heard was
okay,
you got
so
the guys
I called
together
up Bobby.
with a couple of beers.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I called up Bobby Eaton. I called up Arn Anderson. And I said, guys, we need to have a case of beer and I need to talk. I need some help. So right away, we head over to Bobby Eaton's garage in North Carolina. And we probably end up having about 12, 15 beers apiece. And I said, Arn, Bobby, I'm going to be a truck driver. I need a great name. What's my name going to be? And I'm going to be a badass truck driver. And Arn looks at me and he puts his glasses down lower part of his nose and he looks at me and he goes, "You're the Blacktop Bully."
Oh,
and I looked at him and I went, "Arn, that is the greatest freaking name ever." And that's how it came over a couple of cases of beer in Bobby Eaton's garage.
Wow.
couple of cases my ass, but nonetheless, Blacktop Bully to me, boy, talk about a name for a professional wrestling, heel, and that's absolutely perfect. Well, we are all the better for it, so thank you, Arn Anderson. Before we go to the word association, I want to talk about your son. Your son Dakota. I haven't seen him for a long, long time. The last time I did, he was a young upstart getting started in the wrestling business. And but man, this kid, with the genes he's got, he is destined for stardom. But then all of a sudden, his career path changed a little bit.
Yeah, I tell you what, I got the greatest kid in the world. I didn't want him to get in the business to start with, but he was going to school at Mankato, and he called me up. He says, "Dad, I'm getting in the business." So anyways, I ended up helping him get in, and he signed a contract with the WWE. So he was at the school down in Florida, and I just thought he was too young, and he looked too young, but the kid ended up learning how to work really well. And he ended up getting a concussion down there. So he had a 2-year contract. He got a concussion. They ended up not signing him again. So then he went to TNA wrestling, and Hulk and Eric Bischoff kind of took him under their wing, and he really started learning how to work then on TV. In his last match, he ended up having a pretty good match. But Hulk told him, he says, "Dakota," he says, "you got to head out of here." He says, "I'm going to be quitting my job, and Eric's losing his job." So Dakota calls me up and says, "Dad, what do I do?" And I said, "Leave the business, get out of the business." So he ended up doing that, and he was married and had a baby. And he came up here to Michigan, and he went to law enforcement. He finished his degree, went through the academy here, and became a cop. So he's the deputy here, and he's a little bit more than just the deputy. He's a canine officer. He's on the dive team. He teaches at the academy.
Oh man!
He just became a sergeant, and he's like the guy, and he's he just loves his job and loves his family. He's just a great kid, and that's why I'm here in Michigan now, is just to help him out and be with him and the family. But he told me last night, he said, "You tell Mick I said hi." So
he's such a great kid. I honest to God, and again, going back in the day, I remember talking to Lenny Lane, one of the independent guys, about Dakota, and he just spoke volumes about how good this kid was going to be. And then all of a sudden, where did he go? But it sounds like he's really, really, following a great career path. And again, he's got the father's genes, although I find it kind of interesting that a guy that goes 107 miles an hour on the freeway in a 65 and bullies people on a blacktop has a sergeant cop for a son.
And repos cars.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, right now, if he got into wrestling, I think he'd be really good, because he's got the look now, and he's what they call in this business weathered.
Gotcha.
He's weathered, but he's got a great career now, and I'm so proud of him.
That's fantastic. All right. You guys got any questions, or should we throw some names at Barry here?
I say let's
a question, but a comment. I see the Demolition Smash, little lower third graphic. You have to change it, judging by your backdrop, as construction smash. Looks like you're building and not destroying nowadays, Barry.
Well, I try to build, but I do destroy a lot of stuff too. Yeah. there's a lot of stuff I got to build, and I got to take it down.
Beer cans excluded.
You know, the worst thing is when you build.
Oh, we got a little bit of a freeze up.
Wait a minute.
You know, technology is good, but sometimes it just says I need a little break.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, in the lower left of your screen, that's the Blacktop Bully, in case you're just joining us.
Well, and Mick, if I'm not mistaken, as I was doing my research, and I don't remember this, but Mr. Hole in One?
You know, that may be, something.
He's back.
Probably not
the golfer. But I know that. I mean, I've heard that he likes to golf, so I guess that's I guess you could kind of say that it'd be based on part of his personality.
Yeah. Well, we got Barry back, so
You're talking about my golf gimmick?
Yep.
Yeah.
I love the golf gimmick because I'm a golfer.
Nice.
Well, I can imagine being on the 18th, and you're tied with your opponent, and then Barry Darsow forgets to sign his scorecard on the way to the clubhouse. I want to know who the hell's going to confront him, and tell him, Barry, you took a 6 on that par 3, not a 3. So.
I'll tell you, Kurt Hennig and I used to golf, and we'd be out in the middle of the night in the dark playing each other. He'd be winning, we did it all the time. Oh, that's man.
That's so great. What an era in wrestling. All right, Chris, you want to put a name up or a picture up, and then I will talk to Barry about these guys individually a little bit.
Who is going to be the opening match?
The opening match. Where's Chris? Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. Talk a little bit about your old boss, Cowboy Bill Watts.
Cowboy Bill Watts was a rough son of a gun, tough son of a gun. And he kind of was one of those bosses that he wasn't a nice guy boss. He was a mean boss that knew exactly what he was doing, but he got the point across. And when I say mean boss, it was if he didn't do what he say, he beat the hell out of you kind of a boss. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Oh, he knew wrestling better than anybody. And how do I say it? No, and I'm saying this with respect. You know what I mean? He was a tough guy, and how like if you're in school back in the old days, you get paddled if you did something wrong in school.
Yeah,
well, he'd kick you or you know what I mean? But he taught you how to be a professional wrestler. And that's what you needed back then. You needed that guy that would just tear you up, I really liked Bill Watts. And maybe I'm making that sound bad, but
no, absolutely not. No.
You know what I'm talking about? It wasn't like, hey Mick, why don't you take this front face lock and I'll do it. It was, here's what you do, and he'd rip you into it, you know what I mean? And he'd make you learn it,
Well, his show and his television and that Mid-South stuff, that was great, compelling TV every week.
Yeah, and that was Bill Watts being real enforcive and real, it wasn't asking, it was telling you, this is what you do, that was Bill Watts. But boy, he was a smart son of a gun.
Tremendous.
Next name that we've got on our list is The Natural, Butch Reed.
Oh, Brother Butch was a great guy. What a worker and what an interviewer. I got to be really good friends with Butch, did a lot of traveling with him down in Louisiana. And you couldn't ask for a nicer guy. He would do anything for you. I sure would have hated to gotten a fight with him in the back alleys, though. He was a tough son of a gun.
I remember he came into the AWA very briefly, in the mid 1980s when Vern was doing his Pro Wrestling USA. And I just always thought, man, there's so much that they could do with him. But he was kind of in for the cup of coffee, and then he was gone.
Yeah, and he was a good-looking guy too.
Great. Oh man, massive.
Yeah.
Just a fire hydrant guy.
Yeah.
All right. Next guy up on the list. Let me make sure that I am going in order here. And then Chris will put up the picture of the Junkyard Dog.
Now, you know how Hulk Hogan was over in the AWA? That was Junkyard Dog down in the South. He was over big. And he wasn't the worker like Nick Bockwinkel.
Right.
But the way he worked, all the heels would work against him, and he was over so much. I really, really liked the Junkyard Dog. He was a good guy, and it was very sad when he passed away too. You couldn't ask for a better guy. I mean, he, down in Louisiana, he helped me out a lot. He lived about 3-4 blocks from me, and I was young down there, and whenever I had questions, I'd talk to the Junkyard Dog, and he was completely honest with you all the time.
Yeah. The next name that I'm seeing on the list, I've heard nothing but great things about. An incredible worker. Why they gave him the Red Rooster gimmick, I'll never know. But Terry Taylor.
Yeah, when I was down in Louisiana, Art Cruz, George Weingroff, Lanny Poffo, and Terry Taylor were the guys that came to the ring before the matches, before the people came in, and they'd help me, train me. And Terry Taylor, in the ring during my matches, he would train me during the matches.
I got you.
And he was that good and the greatest guy. And I just saw him a few weeks ago at Arn Anderson's son, his funeral. And it was great to see Terry, but Terry's doing really well right now. He still works for the WWE, in fact. But what a good guy. I don't know why they put that gimmick on him. He had heat somewhere, and they just said, hey, let's make him a Red Rooster. You know what I mean?
You know what's interesting about it? I talked to Terry about that a couple of times, and he said, the fans will give him a hard time about the Red Rooster gimmick. He said, yeah, it wasn't the greatest thing in the world. He said, but I made more money than I ever made in my life.
Yeah.
He said, so there is that part of it. The one thing that I would say about Terry Taylor, and you probably haven't had this experience, and I mentioned it on the podcast before. Terry and I were doing voiceovers for the AWF Warriors of Wrestling round system back in the 90s. And we would sit in this little enclosed studio doing the voiceovers, and Terry liked his protein bars, and if you've ever been in an enclosed space with Terry Taylor after he's had some protein bars, my God, it's like the tornado sirens were going off. Kids were going underneath their desk at school. I mean, it was rough stuff. But anyway, here nor there. Let's talk about another guy. Let's get his picture up on the screen. And I'm loving this, Barry, the memories that we've got here. Let's take another look as Chris gets another guy up. There he is. There's a very young, he was probably worth $1.98 before he was the $1 million man. Talk a little bit about Ted DiBiase.
I first met Ted in Louisiana too. All these guys from down there. And, Ted, what a freaking worker back then. And he only got better as the time went on. But, he always seemed to fall in the right place at the right time, working with the right guys and making the money. But, he was one of the guys you wanted to be on the card with, because when you watched him work, you wanted to work like him. I mean, he was really, really good.
Wow.
And boy, talk about a guy who fell into the gimmick.
Yeah.
That $1 million man.
Yeah.
Tremendous. Just tremendous. All right, Joe's got one here that I know he's been waiting to ask about.
Well, hey, let's face it. It's she's good on the eyes. Missy Hyatt.
Oh, I just talked to her not too long ago. What a sweetheart.
Yeah.
She actually introduced my wife to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my wife was working at a nail salon in North Carolina, and Missy, I saw her one night and I said, Missy, I need to meet a girl who doesn't know anything about wrestling, doesn't hang around the bars, doesn't. She goes, well, I don't know anybody like that, you know. And I said, well, that's what I want to meet. So it ended up being, well, I got the perfect girl. She goes to church, and that doesn't know anything about wrestling or anything. She introduced me to my wife. 6 weeks later, we got married.
Wow.
6 weeks.
Yep.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
How long have you been together with your wife then?
I've been married 38 years.
Wow. Congratulations. That's rare in this business.
Yeah. So I just talked to Missy probably about 2 months ago, and she's doing fantastic.
Boy, she's something else.
Yeah.
What a personality. I love Missy.
Well, she's done a lot of stuff in her career. You know?
One way to put it.
Yeah, I imagine she has. Moving on to the next name. Here's a guy that what I hear from people in the business is that he is was one sweetheart of a guy. And I'll wait for Chris to put up the picture. Nikolai Volkov.
Oh, I love Nikolai. That was terrible. I was with Nikolai probably a week before he passed away. And he said to me, he always says, Fat Darsow, you know, he says, when are you going to drop that weight? Like you always say, you know, and I go up and down all the time. And he says, you got to be healthy like me, you know? And it was so sad when he died. There's not one person in this business that didn't love Nikolai. And I talk to Nikolai's son every once in a while, and he's just a great guy too. But yeah, Nikolai's one of the guys in this business. When we'd go do the signings, he'd always come up and talk to all the guys and everything. And he's one that's really missed a lot.
Fantastic.
Well, sticking on the whole Russian theme, somebody that you obviously worked with quite extensively, Uncle Ivan Koloff.
Oh, Uncle Ivan. I learned so much from Uncle Ivan. What a gentleman. He was probably one of the tougher guys in life. I mean, he was always hurt. You didn't even know he was hurt, and he'd work and work. I used to have to scream at him in the ring to get him out of the ring. We'd have our Broadways with the Rock and Roll Express, and I couldn't get him out of the ring. He was just a machine, and sad that he died too. You know, I mean, there's so many people that have died. I can't even stand talking about it, but what a good guy. What a good guy.
You know, and it's interesting too, because the heels in wrestling, especially the foreign heels, you know, you talk about, you know, Nikolai Volkov and you talk about Ivan Koloff, and outside the ring, they are the nicest guys in the world.
The nicest. Yeah. Good family people, really good family people.
Oh, I know. Ivan, you know, his wife was on Facebook all the time, you know, and I know that Ivan was a very religious guy, and yeah, very, very much missed. You mentioned a tag team, so let's talk about them a little bit. The Rock and Roll Express.
I've had probably the best matches of my life with those guys, as all different gimmicks. My last match that I had in my career was with the Rock and Roll Express. I got a new knee about 5 years ago, and I wrestled the Rock and Roll Express in North Carolina, our last match. And I wasn't supposed to get in the ring. And Ricky says, Barry, come on, let's get it. It'll be the last match. And I hobbled around the ring. I didn't even move, and we had a match, and that was the last match. But when I was in Watts' territory, Nikolai and we worked with those guys. And back then, we were the two big monsters. And the Rock and Roll came in, and they were these little skinny dudes. And I remember Bill Watts saying, you beat the crap out of these guys, you know, because he believed in the real thing.
Yeah.
And then Nikolai said, but if we take a few bumps for these guys, we're going to get these guys over. And I remember Watts going, well, if you really want to do that, well, we ended up doing that. We flew for these guys. They got over so big. We ended up having an angle with them, and we made so much money down there. When I left there and got to Charlotte, North Carolina, I was with Dusty, and Dusty says, we need to get you a tag team for you and Ivan. Who should we bring in? I said, we need to bring the Rock and Roll Express in. So we ended up bringing the Rock and Roll Express in. We worked an angle with those guys. We worked our Broadways every day, all that for the championship, dropped the belts to them. They were over so big. They were so fun to work with. Great guys.
And they're still working.
Yeah.
They're still working.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
And
Still getting in the ring.
not just going through the motions. I mean, Ricky is still flying outside of the ring.
Yeah. You couldn't ask for nicer guys, though, too, you know. But they're over.
Oh, they're over.
Well, that's sort of, you had mentioned his name earlier, and I gotta ask, I mean, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, I love Dusty. Dusty was one of the reasons that I got down to Louisiana with Bill Watts. I was in New Zealand working for Mrs. Maivia, and in Hawaii, New Zealand, Tonga, all there. When I came back, I called Dusty, and I got his name from Mark Lewin, and Dusty says, well, come on down. You know, if Mark gave you my number, come on down to Tampa. So I went down to Tampa. I met Dusty, and that was when Florida Championship Wrestling was booming.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
Oh, was it huge? Mulligan. I mean, all the top guys were down there. And so I went down there and I met everybody. And then Dusty says, I'm going to send you to Atlanta, and then they're going to send you to Bill Watts, and you're going to learn how to work. And that was Dusty who did all that for me. And then, you know, when I went to Crockett's territory, Dusty was one who called me and said, come on in, Barry. And, you know, so that's the whole story. Dusty was the real deal. He knew the business, and he's the one that could get you the jobs.
You know, it's interesting when they talk about the greatest superstars of all time in the wrestling business. How can you not mention Dusty Rhodes? I mean,
Yeah.
really, you know, outside of Flair and Hogan in the 1980s or whatever, nobody was over like Dusty Rhodes. And you know, hear his students talk, the ones that he's brought into the business for the WWE over the years, they just love this guy.
Boy, the guy couldn't fish, though. I called him up. I said, hey, Dusty, we're in Montana for 3 days. I said, you going to go fishing with me? Yeah. Hey, Barry, baby. Yeah, I'll outfish you, you know. Yeah. So we went and stopped off at a little tackle store, bought a couple fishing rods and everything. We fished 3 different streams in Montana, and we caught trout. Every one. We had the time of our life. I'll never forget that with Dusty. I mean, it was fun to be outside the wrestling business with him because he was just a great guy.
It seemed like he was the same. What you saw, wrestling, like Dusty doing a promo, that was Dusty. I mean, that was just Dusty inside or outside of the ring. He was a character.
Yeah, he was a regular guy. That was him. He was the average guy, you know, the plumber, the construction worker, the whatever. Yeah. That was him.
Nice.
Great memories. Talk about this next individual we're going to get a picture of, and you talk about guys who unfortunately had their careers cut short, and that's Magnum TA. Talk a little bit about Terry Allen.
Oh, Magnum, you know, he was Bill Watts's young boy. You know, he ended up really learning how to work for Bill Watts and became the champion down there. And when you left Louisiana and went to Crockett's territory, you know, they were grooming Terry to be like Ric Flair or whatever. And not too many guys can be in that position to where you can do that. It's not like, hey, Barry, we're going to make you the world champion. You're the world champion. Well, it really takes somebody extra. And Terry was that. Yeah. And they were making him that. And it was so sad when he got in that car accident. I was in the territory at the time because he was going to be the guy, you know. and it was so sad. And what a super nice guy. When you worked with him, because he worked with everybody. He didn't just eat you up or do whatever. He wanted good matches with you, and he was stiff too. But he was good. He was good. Really nice guy.
Well, and a part of, one of the most infamous matches, if you will, the I Quit match with Tully.
Right. Right.
That was a hell of an angle. Just incredible, fantastic. Across.
And Tully was a great worker too. Those two had some matches that were just incredible.
Well, another guy who did all right for himself inside of the ring was a gentleman by the name of Ric Flair.
Ric Flair. I talked to Rick. He called me probably about a half a year ago. We talked for quite a while, and then I saw him on the road not too long ago. Now, Rick helped me out a lot in this business too. When I was first going to Hawaii, I met Rick at the airport, and I just got out of Eddie Sharkey's camp, and I saw him walking down the deal, and I said, "Hey, kayfabe," and he looked at me and right away gave me the handshake and said, "Who are you?" And I introduced myself, and I told him I was going to Hawaii and then New Zealand. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to be in New Zealand in 5 weeks. Are you there?" I said, "Yeah." So we ended up hooking up in New Zealand. And now this is the greatest wrestler of all time. I'm hooking up with him in New Zealand. I've never even been in this business before. So I spent 4 weeks in New Zealand drinking beer on the road, having the time of my life with the world champion. And talking about being the luckiest guy, right? So then that was kind of my in to being in wrestling everywhere. All I mentioned is, I was with Rick over there, and Rick gives me his telephone number, and anytime you want to talk, call. So all the different territories I was in, Rick would look me up. I'd get the car, we'd drive, we'd drink, we'd party, do whatever, and then he'd take off to the next territory. And when I was in Florida Championship Wrestling, that's when he called me up. He says, "Barry, you got to come to Crockett's territory." He says, we're gonna bust that territory wide open. I said, "Well, Rick," I said, "I make an incredible money here and I love it here." He says, "Get the hell out of there." And so I says, "Well, who else is coming?" He goes, "Arn Anderson's coming." And I met Arn many years before that. I says, "Well, if Arn comes, I'm coming." So both Arn and I went there, and that was because of Rick. So
that's has Rick been his own worst enemy over the years?
Rick is, yeah. Rick is Ric Flair. I mean, when he goes to the bar, he just got a check for $10,000, but he spent $15,000. He really is Ric Flair, the limo driving, jet flying son of a gun. He's Ric Flair, and
the gimmick.
And he hasn't changed at all. Bill and I were up at a Hilton somewhere just a couple months ago. All of a sudden, Rick comes in. Didn't know we were there. We're sitting at the bar. Rick looks at me. He goes, "Woo!" Next thing you know, drinks for the bar, right? And I said, "Rick, you don't have to do that." He goes, "Oh, no." He says, "The promoter's paying for it." Well, pretty soon there's about 50 people in there, 100 people. Now he's buying beers for everybody. The tab was about $15,000. He signs the check, goes to bed. I mean, I love him.
Legacy.
I love him.
Absolute legacy. I got to kind of shift territories on you a little bit here. I want to talk about two guys actually at the same time that I know you are very familiar with, and that would be Tito Santana and Rick Martel.
Oh, two incredible workers. I was just with Tito in Indianapolis a couple of days ago, and Tito still gets in the ring and works. Mm-hmm. He's got to be he's got to be 68. I don't know, but
sure, yeah.
He looks phenomenal still, and he's on the road doing the autograph stuff. But now Rick, I haven't seen Rick now probably for 3-4 years, and I heard he doesn't go out and do any of the signings or anything.
Right.
But those two guys together as the strike force, two incredible workers and two great guys, and everything they did in the ring was for the match. It wasn't for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of the guys in the business weren't like that. And I thought that's how we were. We were for the match, not for us. And that's why I think we had so many good matches.
Absolutely. I was going to say that's why it works. You know,
Yeah.
if you get, you know what your job is, and it's to sell the match and make your opponents look good and make money. And I had heard the same thing about Rick Martel, or about Ricky in terms of him not wanting to be a part of the business. I saw him in Cauliflower Alley, but that was years ago. And he's just kind of, I believe he's still up in Canada, kind of doing his own thing and just removed from the business. And what a nice guy.
Yeah, he was very successful in the real estate business.
Okay.
And did very well. Last time I saw him, I was doing a show in Canada. It was probably about 2 to 3 years ago. Bill and I were up there. We sat and talked for quite a while. But he just said, I just don't even want to travel or be around the business anymore. And, you know, I can see that, you know, when you're around it so much, you know, it gets to you after a while, the travel.
Well, yeah, great matches with you and Tito and good stuff, man. Great memories.
Well, another guy who I don't think anybody can argue was an incredible worker. I never had the fortune of working with him, but everything that everybody has said about him, this guy is just the salt of the earth. Ricky Steamboat.
Oh my God. Ricky in the ring. The last match I had with Rick, I said, Rick, just tell me what to do. And he goes, no, you're the heel. And I said, no, I'm listening to you. And he's so phenomenal that, you know, we had a half-hour match and it went by so fast. But like I was saying earlier, he was very instrumental in me becoming Demolition Smash. He was up in New York, and I was at his gym, and he said, Barry, he goes, do you want a job with Vince? And I said, yes, definitely. He says, well, let me make a call. Well, he went back in the back room and called Vince while I was at the gym. And he said, Vince, you need to take a look at Barry Darsow. He just finished up here, and he's going to go to Japan. You got to scoop him up before Japan. And then Vince told Rick, he says, well, tell him I'll give him a call in the next few days. And that morning is when he called. So I love Ricky. He's incredible nice guy. And I just saw him probably about 6 months ago, and he still looks great.
Oh, he does. He looks tremendous. Yeah. The guy could be on the cover of GQ magazine. Seriously.
Yeah. He was one of the guys that if you wrestled him every day, I'd still be wrestling. Wow. He couldn't hurt you.
Wow.
What a compliment. I mean, that really says it all. That's fantastic. And I've met him a couple of times, and like you say, what a gem of a guy and what an incredible worker. And speaking of gems of a guy, let's talk about one of your old classmates from up here in the Robbinsdale area who made a name for himself, picked up the accent, had a name change, and teamed up with Uncle Ivan for a while, and that is your buddy Nikita Koloff.
Nikita Koloff, what a gentleman! You know, I've known him since, you know, junior high or even elementary school probably, and it's funny that, you know, I was in Florida Championship Wrestling. I haven't talked to him for a while, and next thing you know, Joe Laurinaitis calls me up and says, hey, Scott's getting in the business. And I was like, no way. And he says, yeah, they want him down in Charlotte, North Carolina as a Russian. And they're going to call him Nikita Koloff. And I thought, God, is that the greatest thing in the world? So, you know, him being an athlete, I know he could do it. Yeah. And he gets so serious about things that I knew if they wanted him to really be the character, he would be that. Well, when I went up to the territory because they needed a third guy in there to kind of help because he was just learning how to work, he ended up becoming Nikita Koloff, changed his bank to Nikita Koloff, everything, the phone numbers, everything. He didn't speak English to anybody, and I was kind of his interpreter. So, yeah, and on all my stuff, I had Crusher Khrushchev too. It wasn't Barry Darsow, but I could speak English. So we'd go in the bank, and he'd talk Russian to me, and I go, "Oh yeah, he needs to take $15 out of the bank today. Is that all right?" Stuff like that. And the people in Louisiana or in North Carolina, they really believed he was a Russian. That's how he got over. They really thought that Uncle Ivan was his uncle. So he took it to the extreme and made it work. And he's a preacher now, and he's just he's a good man.
What a monster of a guy he was, and that Russian sickle, especially the one he gave to David Crockett on television. Which of course is legendary. But and again, with all this time, I haven't had the opportunity to meet him, but boy, he fit that character.
Yeah, I was so proud of him because he didn't go through a camp or anything.
He didn't.
And he ended up becoming a really, really good worker in the ring for what he did.
Wow. Well, sort of the, shall we say, opposite of that is a guy who I worked with quite a bit in the AWA, and I'll set it up. You had talked about earlier about wanting to come home and be in Minnesota. Well, this next guy, Mr. Curt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. I remember a conversation I had with Curt in the control room at the AWA, and this was when Vern had finally given him a guarantee. And I asked Curt, I go, why haven't you left for the WWF yet? And he goes, Vern's paying me a shitload of money. I work maybe 10 days a month. I get to be home with my family. Vern's going to go under, and I am going to go to the WWF, but why would I do it now? Give me some stories about Curt. I mean, Mike, I've got so many myself that I've shared on here, but my God, was he an incredible worker. And I hate to say this in a way, he was Mr. Perfect.
He really was. When he was in the AWA, he could work, but he didn't really become the worker till he got to the WWF. When he got to the WWF, his whole everything changed. He really became Mr. Perfect in Curt Hennig. And, I talked to him all the time. And I remember one day Vince told Blackjack Lanza, he said, go talk to Barry. I want Curt. And there were so many of the guys that I talked to that say, hey, come on up here, but I called Curt and I said, Curt, they really want you bad here. And Curt told me that same story you did. And I said, but Curt, you gotta come. I said, you gotta break the ice and get away from Vern, because they want you now. If you don't come now, you may not get up here. I said, that's just how it is. And he thanked me. And about a month later, Curt came up there, and they were trying to figure out the gimmick for him. And it took a while for him to become Mr. Perfect. But once he did that, I mean, he should have been the world champion. I don't know how many times up there, but I think they thought that he was better getting other people over because he was so good and he could stay over. They didn't want him to be the champion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
He was one of those guys that he could do anything, and they knew it. And even though he got beat, him and Bret Hart, holy cow, best matches you could ever have, even to this day. Some of the best matches.
Well, and then pairing Curt with Bobby Heenan, I mean, my goodness, what a team those two made.
I wish Curt was still alive, because if he would have saw his son in the business and been with his grandkids, and it's just terrible that he passed away.
Well, and one final word about Curt, and I know we've mentioned this before. In my time in the business, there was nobody who liked to rib more than Curt Hennig.
Yeah. You know what Curt did to me one day?
No, but I'd love
Oh
to
boy.
hear.
Oh boy.
So I'm on Mille Lacs Lake. It's about 30 below zero. I'm up ice fishing in a fish house. I got my truck parked next to the fish house. Kurt comes up with his buddy Pat Johnson. Had a few drinks in them. They we're about probably 10 miles out in the lake. They come out there, they bust in the fish house, have a few beers and everything. They said, "Yeah, come on up to the casino." So me and another one of my buddies are up there. We said, "Okay, we'll be up there in about a half hour." Well, he sneaks in my truck. He takes the battery cable off the deal out in the truck, and he throws a dead fish in my truck and locks the door. So now they're like 10 miles away. He calls me up. He goes, "Barry, when are you gonna come?" I said, "All right, I'm coming." I get out there. There's this dead fish sitting in the front of my car, big old walleye, stinks up the whole thing. I try to start the truck, it doesn't start. I said, "You son of a..." Now it's 30 below zero outside. We're freezing our asses off, and Kurt and Pat Johnson are blinking their headlights up on the highway at us.
Oh, that's great.
So then they leave. Then he leaves, and then now I'm going. Now we're stuck out here, 30 below. Holy shit! So then he calls me back about 15 minutes later. I just put the battery cable back on me.
Oh God! Oh, that's a tremendous.
Oh man!
Classic Kurt Hennig.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's I talk to Lenise all the time, and I mean, she has such reverence for Kurt. Talks about him all the time, like he's still here, and no doubt about it. Had he seen Joe in the ring, and even Amy for the short time that she was wrestling, he would have been just popping his buttons.
Oh man, great business, guys. Great business.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so many stories.
Yeah. As we're getting ready to wrap it up here, just got a couple more questions for you, Barry. When you got old, you retire from the in-ring competition. Did you ever think about doing some of the stuff backstage? Where they're, they got the producers or the creative or whatever, or did you just decide, once you were done actively in the ring that you were going to kind of, not be as quite involved?
Well, it's funny you say that because at WCW, I did ask if I could get a job in the office and everything, but it was such a close linked group of guys there, the NWO guys and everything. They weren't going to bring, a Ric Flair, Arn Anderson guy in to their group. It's almost like you got these little groups and you got to just be at the right place at the right time. Yeah. But after that, no, then I just didn't even want anything to do with it anymore. I didn't want to travel at all anymore. And, even now, Bill will call me up and go, "Hey, Barry, we got a date here and there," and I'd say, "I thought we were only going out 2 days a month," and, it's, you got to be very thankful that you can make money now and all that, but there's more to it now,
Sure there is.
When I see these grandkids come up after school and they're yelling, "Papa, Papa," I don't care how much money you have. It's just, I love them,
Well, Barry, you've said that there was one guy in the business that you did not work with, but you wish you would have. And it's some guy, I think his name was, is Hulk Hogan. You might have heard of him.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about the Hulkster.
I get along with the Hulkster very well. We're not best friends or anything, but when I see him, he says, "Hey, Barry, how you doing?" We talk and chit chat and everything. He's the guy that made this wrestling business. I mean, he's the one that put it up to the next pedestal, I feel. Yeah. And I wish I could have worked an angle with him, and I think I would have had great matches with him, but it just never came to that point. I think if I would have stayed Demolition Smash after the tag team broke up, and I would have kept Smash going, I think I would have been able to have a run with them. But it just never fit to be with them. We were partners a few times, and but it just wasn't there. And Hulk would pick the guys who are going to make him the most amount of money. Sure. And I just wasn't ever in that spot as a single to be that main event, like the Boss Man or Andre, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
but I sure would have loved to have beat him.
Oh yeah, Barry. We're going to wrap it up here, and I think Hogan was a good place to end. But not to get too sentimental here, but in all the years that I've been in the business, and I talked to Joe and Chris about this ahead of the podcast, I don't think that there is any guy out there, and I'm not saying you weren't appreciated in the business, because sure you were. But I hear it now, you're talking about your work ethic and getting into the characters as you did. And I don't know of anybody who is more of a Hall of Fame guy than you are. And I mean that sincerely, not only in the ring, but also outside the ring. And the way you had adapted to every single character that you were given, to the point where people were saying, well, who's Barry Darsow coming in this time? It didn't matter, because you aced the character. And I've known you for a long time, and talk about a consummate professional wrestler. Your dedication to the business is one thing, but as a human being, man, I'm telling you, you're one of my favorite people on the planet, and I am absolutely honored to call you a friend. And that's a shoot.
Mick, I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And you've been a friend forever, too, and thank you. That means a lot.
More than welcome, bud.
So, guys, thank you for everything. It was nice meeting you guys. And, Chris, I'll see you in the gym.
Yes,
Joe,
yes, you will.
Joe, continue being a heel. You're a good one. All right.
You won't see me in the gym, Barry. So don't be looking for me. Unless I'm at the beverage counter. I may be there. But God love you, Barry. Continued success on the road with you and Bill, and you're aces, bud.
All right. Well, if you ever need anything, you guys got my number. Call me, whatever. All righty.
Thank you so much, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Barry.
Yep. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, there he is, the great Barry Darsow. And guys, the last 2 weeks, I know that we went a little bit long with this one, and that's just fine. You can't, 2 hours really does not do Barry and his career justice, because there's still a lot of things that we could have talked about, but hopefully over the last 2 weeks, people have really gotten a sense of who he is. And I feel like anything that you can ask him, like he was an open book, and you got to appreciate people like that.
He's the one thing that I would say, Chris and Joe, that I really took out of this is his commitment to his character. And again, as I said, in this day and age of professional wrestling, people are kind of tuned into, I know what this guy is really like outside the ring. And, he's really not a tough guy. And, John Cena, 1 week he's wrestling, next week he's making movies. Barry comes from an era when you believed, and his character and the way that he got into it and the way that he presented it, as I said, the Blacktop Bully, I'm telling you, if you're the average fan, you don't want to fuck with this guy. I mean, he was a Blacktop Bully, and you believed it. And
yes,
to his credit, what a guy. And I wasn't, being over dramatic there. He's a great friend in this business, and I'm honored to know him.
Well, and you add in that the legacy of Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Barry not only held his own, but he helped to elevate Robbinsdale, Minnesota for the incredible array of talent that has come out of there. And one of the other names that we didn't mention was Medusa Michelli.
Yeah.
He's from Robbinsdale as well. I mean, just incredible. Something in the water, something in the beer in Robbinsdale, Minnesota gave us all of these incredible, phenomenal professional wrestlers.
Yeah, and not to mention, John Nord and Road Warrior. So, I mean, the
Brady
list,
Boone.
Brady Boone,
yeah, the list goes on and on and on. And so hopefully you guys, even though he didn't work in the AWA, but I thought the answer was very interesting, about, maybe Vern might have felt a little intimidated that maybe, the Robbinsdale crew would have taken over. So hopefully, you guys got a lot out of it, and we certainly enjoyed it. I know we went a little bit long, guys. Let's go ahead and wrap it up, bring it home, as they say. We want to do some shout outs here, and then
well, we got Chris froze. Oh, he's back.
There he is. He's back.
No, and he froze up again.
Really? I'm here. So there we are. There we are. No, that's weird. Okay. See, I'm not. Yeah, I'm a slow-mo sexual. What can I say?
Hey.
Okay. Let's.
Okay.
Hey,
shout-outs.
Let's go and shout-outs. Yes.
Am I going?
You're up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you go, Mick.
My shout-out is to a great wrestling veteran who's been in the business literally 50-some years as a wrestler, as a trainer, as an all-around great guy. And in Waterloo this summer, he is getting a long-deserved Jack Briscoe Award for excellence in the business. I'm talking about my buddy Les Thatcher. You won't find a nicer guy anywhere. So, Les, we love you. We'll see you in Waterloo.
My shout out is to somebody who has not been in the business, but has appreciated it for nearly 60 years. This one might be easy, but I'm going to give a shout out to my mom.
Oh,
She still is an incredible wrestling fan. And even though I have been in the business and around it since 1985, when I go to see her and wrestling is on, she still is that 8-year-old kid, and she still believes. So, Mom, mwah, for you. Dziękuję bardzo.
And mine is not going to be as emotional or as personal as your guys, but I'm going to go with Tim Henderson at Tim Henderson02 on Twitter. Big fan of the podcast, big follower of ours, and always comments and always is supporting it. So there you go. We're going to wrap it up. Thanks to Soda Stick. Thanks to 7th Avenue Pizza. If you want to get a hoodie like Joe's got, you want to get a t-shirt, sodastickco.com. 7th Avenue Pizza. There you go. Yep. And he's even got his gimmick there in the gimmick. See, it's been 2 weeks and I just
the heel Polish Joe.
The heel Polish. Oh man, dude! I swear to God, I was like, oh damn! I was sitting here and I was just gonna. I had some cheese and some wine. I was just gonna. Man,
well, it's amazing. It's amazing how just one misplaced word can change what you are trying to say. It's so like I've told my kids all along. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. In my case, it was what I said. No matter how I said it. The whole approach was there was a semblance, and I remember them coming out. Yeah, they, I thought of the Road Warriors, but again, Demolition, they deserve their spot in professional wrestling history, and they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, Vince.